Hi, I'm Tim Ellis. Thanks for joining us for Laneway Live. Tonight's guest is not only a star of stage, screen, and television, but he's also GQ's Man of the Year. Please welcome Lawrence Leung.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Wow.
Good to see you too, in this virtual kind of way. I love your backdrop now. It's a lot more becoming than the red background you used to have. Is that a real brick wall?
It is. It's a real brick wall. It's not fake. It's not green screen. Are they real butterflies behind you?
No, it's a print of butterflies, of a scientific print, but they're not real butterflies.
Well, you've got to.
But it is real. It is real. It's not
It's not a
virtual background.
But
I just touched my green screen.
You have got a great scientific background, both there in your house and also in your life.
Good segue. I mean, yeah, I do love science and psychology, especially. That's what I study at university. But yeah, I also studied cinema studies and creative writing. I had a triple Bachelor of Arts Science degree, and I think I've kind of used all those things in some way in my, performing career. But I didn't intend that when I first started university. It just kind of leached into my performance.
It's amazing how it's all worked out so perfectly for you. I mean, your science has been applied in your association with the Skeptic Society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've done quite a few things with the Skeptics. I've done talks at their conferences. I've done, I guess, a lot of skeptical things. I've done a skeptical TV show, which is a comedy TV show called Unbelievable a few years ago, and it was kind of a skeptical education show by stealth. To everyone else, it was just a comedy documentary show, but really I was sticking in some themes there, which I've been obsessed by since I was a teenager, being a big James Randi fan.
We should have a quick look at Unbelievable and we can have a chat about it. So it's a little trailer, I guess, to give people a bit of a taste of what Unbelievable was like.
Watch closely, don't blink, because if you do, you're going to miss something unbelievable. Seeing isn't always believing. My name's Lawrence Leung, and I'm on a new quest. I want to find out, do psychic powers really exist?
I don't believe that your corner astrologer or tarot reader is breaking that ethical rule.
You've got a fairly big bass tracker.
Does it make me look fat?
But those people on TV talking to dead people, they are exploiting people's emotions for profit.
If all you need to be a psychic is some vague cliches, I know where you can find an endless supply. Karaoke.
Because you deserve the best in life, you do much better, baby, on your own.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking for the right person still.
Are ghosts real? To find out, I've come to northern Scotland to investigate one of their most haunted castles. I've enlisted an expert team of professional ghost hunters.
Right, there. Yeah. Oh, like this.
I'm going to learn to be a better magician. So much better, in fact, that I'm going to try to fool another magician.
Good morning, I'm a magician.
Really, fooling magicians should not be your goal. It should be putting together a routine or an act that the layman will be excited to see and that we'll go home and talk about.
Oh, it's my belt.
Magic. I'm going to take a rational person and slowly change their everyday reality to make them think that they have psychic superpowers. This is my challenge. I'm going to try to turn a skeptic into a believer.
No. Oh my God!
I've always been fascinated by aliens, in the sky and on the telly, and I'm not the only one.
Let me show you some aliens. There's reports of a lot of activity out here that people see.
What's with all the anal probing?
Well, there's experimentation, and it goes on, but they also like the taste of the rectum.
You always hear
They
that
love the taste of it.
Lawrence,
might try that again without the Ouija board.
Yeah, that's me in Unbelievable vomiting on a Ouija board. Don't ask.
Unbelievable was fascinating because every episode was exploring a different thing you found fascinating.
Yeah, so Unbelievable, I guess, was it was an ABC television series, 6 parts, a documentary comedy. So I was trying a few different things in each different episode. So the first episode was all about psychics and whether they exist. Well, the idea of psychic powers, whether it's real or not. The second episode was about ghosts. Third episode was about UFOs, and we went down to Roswell for that. Fourth episode was about magic. Fifth episode was about manipulation and lies. And the final episode was called The Experiment. Actually, it was called The One, but it was an experiment to see if I could turn a skeptic into a believer using all the things I'd learned from the other 5 episodes.
It was a fascinating show. You must have had a pretty good budget on it. You traveled all around the world.
Well, we had an Australian Broadcasting Corporation budget, so it wasn't the biggest budget in the world. We had a very small crew who would be, 2 camera people were also the sound recordists, and one of them was, 2 of them were the directors as well. So we had a very skint crew when we traveled overseas, but that kind of got us into places which I think that you wouldn't normally get into because we were such a guerrilla filmmaking crew. And we had a fantastic time. I mean, I got to meet some of my heroes like Banachek, Apollo Robbins, Lance Burton, Richard Wiseman, some of my favorite, magicians and scientists and neuroscientists and psychologists, and also skeptics as well. And yeah, it was just an absolutely fascinating globe-trotting adventure, I would say. It was one of my most fun things I've ever done in my life.
And you had fun with Banachek and the Blindfold Drive too.
Yeah. So originally what we were going to do was we were going to film with Banachek just showing me some mentalism to explain how I guess some psychics or fraudulent psychics do their things. And he as a mentalist would of course even be greater because he could bend spoons, do all sorts of book tests on me. And then he mentioned that, hey, if you want me to drive you around completely blindfolded, I could do that tomorrow. All you have to do is turn up with a rent-a-car and some gaffer tape and your film crew, and let's do it. And I remember on the day of shooting, just before doing it, we were all getting really nervous. And our producer was calling Australia to the ABC lawyers to see if this was completely okay to do. And they had to put Banachek on the phone to some lawyers. And I have no idea what he said to them, but he managed to maybe use his mentalist sweet talking mind games on them. But we managed to be allowed to shoot this thing. And so we were in a car traveling around the streets of Las Vegas at pretty high speeds. And yeah, and you could see from the footage in the TV show that I'm absolutely shitting myself. And you could see the camera every now and then cutting because we had to cut out the camera people swearing because they were so frightened as we were doing it. And of course, as magicians, we all know that the Blindfold Drive is a well-known stunt that there's many different methods. But at the time, with us filming it and where I was sitting, I could not figure out from where I was how he was doing it, and that just made it even more exciting. And the fear on my face was genuine.
Years ago, I did a Blindfold Drive for Magic Week, and it was Darren James from 3RW sitting in the car with me. And somebody had loaned us a $100,000 Mercedes for some bizarre reason. So I sit down, blindfold. Darren sits next to me. I start the car. He's like, "Okay, go left, go left." Okay, shut up. I go, slow down, go right. It's like, stop giving me directions. This is not how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, the Blindfold Drive is a fantastic stunt for television. We're very lucky because months later we were back in Australia editing, and Banachek was doing a lecture tour in Australia, and so we managed to write another scene for the very end of that first Psychics episode, where I pretend that I've learned how he's done his stunt, and I drive him whilst I'm blindfolded. and then I totally smash and total the car into a brick wall. So, and of course, that was just a comedy sketch. It wasn't, you know, a real stunt. Well, it was a real stunt, but we had a stunt driver for that particular scene, and it was clearly a comedy sketch, not a magic routine. But it was just fun to have in the closing credits just this moment where we switched around and see Banachek terrified for a second.
It was a really good series. How can people get it though if they want to see it?
I think it can be found where all good videos are torrented. Occasionally the ABC will put it up on iView. Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty available on the internet.
It's not a DVD set or anything?
Search around for it. Unfortunately, no, because in our series, we took a lot of clips from known TV shows like Medium and all sorts of psychic shows or ghost hunting, actual reality TV shows, because we were critiquing them and you know, poking fun at them in a satirical way. But when you use that stuff on Australian TV for comedy, it's done as, you know, comment and satire. So you get sort of protected by all these comedy laws, or freedom of speech laws. I call them comedy laws, freedom of speech laws. But when it comes to selling the DVD, of course, you need to get the rights from the property owners. And so that probably wasn't going to become a thing unless we heavily edited the series, and it got to a point where we were working on our brand new TV series. We'd already moved on to different things, and so we hadn't got around to chopping up the show and perhaps losing a little bit of its bite.
What a pity. And I was absolutely thrilled to have a little bit of a cameo appearance on that series.
Yes, you did, Tim. Episode 5 was the magic episode, and I guess it was all about myself being a magician, wanting to learn how to become a master magician from the world's best. And as you know, I was a fan of yours when I was a young kid growing up. I'd seen you at Bernard's Magic Shop a lot. I'd seen you on television a lot. And I thought for the end of my episode, if I could say my journey to the end of the episode was meeting all sorts of like neuroscientists who were using all those, you know, gorilla playing basketball experiments. I was meeting pickpockets like Apollo. I was getting advice from Lance Burton in Vegas. And finally, the big quest at the end was to see if I could fool a, you know, master magician known as Tim Ellis, yourself, with a magic trick of my own. And as you may recall, it simply involved me. It was quite sneaky, I must say.
It was really good.
So I invited, to the viewers out there, I invited Tim to meet me at a restaurant, at a Thai restaurant, where I was going to show him a card trick that Lance Burton had taught me. And but the real trick was, how do you fool a magician who knows everything about deception and he's probably seen this trick before? And I thought the only way to fool him was to fool you, Tim, was to involve you in such a way that you would be studying a magic trick so intensely in my hands, close up, thinking about what tips and what hints and advice you would give me, that you wouldn't focus on what was happening around the room, behind you, in front of you, 3 meters away from you, even literally 30 centimeters in front of your face. So the entire restaurant, while I was doing the Bob card trick, the entire restaurant was slowly transforming from a Thai restaurant into a Mexican restaurant. So we're talking about the decor. We had Thai paintings and plants and decor slowly changing to like cacti and cactuses, and on the table the tea was getting changed for tequila. The waiters, their clothes were changing into mariachis, and and the music was changing. And then finally at the end, this veil dropped down and this big mariachi band was playing at the end as well. So yeah, but you never saw it transforming at all, did you?
I love the fact, because I mean, when you asked me to do the show, you said, "Oh, I'm going to tell you what the trick is, because I don't think it's going to fool you." And I said, "No, let's just see. Let's just see what it, you know, get a genuine response." And so you start doing your card trick, and I'm like, "Oh, gee, you know, this is what he's going to show me." And that's exactly, I love the fact that's exactly what you had planned. You got into my mind and decided, I want to know his thought process and control his thought process. So I'm sitting there going, oh,
Yeah.
what am I going to say about this trick? So I'm like, my eyes are looking at the trick, but my eyes have now glazed over as I'm thinking, well, I've got to say something nice. You got to break it to him easily. I mean, it's his show, and this is the trick he wanted to fool me with. And so you do the trick, and you go, what do you think? And I go, well, that's not the trick. And I look around, I'm like, oh, you completely got me. It was so good. We can't show footage of it. Find it on torrents.
You know what's really interesting is that when we were discussing it in production meetings leading up to the actual stunt, my producers were really skeptical. They said, this isn't going to work. There's no way he will not see this. And we've only got one shot at this because we only got time in the budget to shoot this once, because we've got a crew of people moving props around. We've got art department who's spending the whole morning rearranging this restaurant. We've only got one shot at this. And so if we fail, it's going to ruin the end of your episode because you don't have a win. But if it works, but Tim Ellis, this FISM award-winning magician, is insulted that we pulled a Swiftie on him, they were scared that you wouldn't sign a release form, so we wouldn't get consent to use the footage. So
I'm humiliated. I'm humiliated. No.
Yeah. So they were saying to me, you have to understand, Lawrence, we may not use this. This could be like money thrown down the drain. And also you won't have an ending for this particular episode because it may not work. And I was saying it will work, because if it doesn't work, it teaches a point about, magicians know what to look for. And also it's a spectacular ending and it's a comedy show anyway. And secondly, I know magicians, and magicians more than anything crave being fooled again, because we love magic and we study how to fool other people to the point where sometimes we get bored when we see magic ourselves, and we're craving that next hit, seeing a trick that fools us, which got us into magic in the first place. And I said to them, if this fools Tim, there's no way he's not going to sign it. He will be absolutely delighted to be fooled, because as magicians, that's what we want to give others, and we love it in return.
And also,
I hope that's how you felt.
And also, you probably could have got me to sign the release in advance. That would have been another way to cover it. Next time,
Yeah.
It was such a good episode. And I was talking to Richard Wiseman last night and talking about how a lot of performers, including himself, will sit down and plan an effect based on the psychology. And they say, okay, so the thought process is going to go there, and then it's going to control to there, and it's going to go to there. And there's a lot of people I know who really plot out their tricks like that. And I was saying, I don't do that. I do it instinctively. And if people ask me, why did it work? I say afterwards, I go like, well, that's why. And I'll think about it then. But I love the fact that you, along with Richard Wiseman and these other people, are doing something that really hasn't happened so much in magic and previously. In this generation, you're really looking at the psychology of how to get people down the garden path. And as Richard said, it doesn't always work, but when it does, it's so beautiful. And you can sit there and say, no, he's not going to see this happening around me, because he'll be focused on this.
There were so many things in the production of a TV show that could go wrong, and such little time, such little budget to get it right. And so we had to really back ourselves, and I had to convince the producers that there was psychology behind all the different stunts and pranks that I was pulling, because I had to convince them to invest the resources into making these pranks work. And so, yeah, there were certain things where we would spend so much time filming, for example, planning a seance with genuine people turning up. And this is for the ghost episode. So it culminating in us hiring this really beautiful old mansion. It was the creepiest looking place at nighttime. And we posted around signs looking for people who wanted to be part of a genuine seance. We posted them on the streets in different towns. And we managed to get a group of people to come and sit at the table. And I was the medium. I've never been a medium before. All I know was from the books that I read on psychology, and I've got tons and tons of books on my shelf there about spiritualism from the 1800s to the 1920s. And so, yeah, based on all of my research, I decided to hold a genuine seance. And this time it wasn't a gimmick seance. So that there were no, you know, fishing wires, there were no wax hands. There was nothing like that going on. There was no people going around in the dark, you know, using black art, moving things around, fishing wire with rods and things. None of that. It was just a purely psychological seance. And in order to do this, we'd have to prime them and make it the most scary experience possible. Sort of what they came in expecting, we had to give that to them in spades in terms of creating a ghost story. But because I was making a comedy show, the story that I was feeding them as we were holding our hands in the cold darkness of this room was the plot to the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. I was just telling the film synopsis, and interestingly, the people at the table really bought into it. And it's a very convincing movie storyline anyway. But yeah, they actually felt that the temperature was dropping when I said it was, that you'd feel it dropping, and we hadn't changed the room. Like you can see on our temperature gauges live that the room hadn't changed. They felt things touching them, and we didn't do any trickery at all. There was nothing touching them, but their heightened sense of suggestibility was so increased that we were able to make them believe that they sensed a presence in the room that wasn't actually there. Of course, we had to tell them at the end that it wasn't real, it was just an experiment. And if they looked around the room, there were actually pictures on the wall, photos with Patrick Swayze, you know, in black and white and done up with Photoshop to look like he was wearing like old 1920s clothes. But yeah, the whole series is all about teaching psychological principles that make us question whether the supernatural really exists, whether the truth is out there or just really inside our heads.
This is so cruel, telling everyone about this great TV series that they can't see.
I swear, you just Google it, Lawrence Leung, unbelievable. I'm sure it's all up there somewhere that I will not get any financial recompense for. But yeah, look it up. It's on the internet. It's in. Just look up the torrents.
But that wasn't your first TV series. I mean, you've been involved in TV a lot as a writer with In Siberia Tonight and The Chaser and a lot of other shows like that. You've done radio, done a lot of work on radio with Triple R, Triple M, Fox FM, I think, as well.
Yeah, it was Fox. It was one of those, early morning, Sunday morning shifts. Yeah, commercial radio.
Doesn't seem like it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, I don't think I could talk about ghosts in it. Yeah. But
your
first.
Yeah, your first show. That's right. You're going to say your first show. Choose Your Own Adventure.
Yeah, Choose Your Own Adventure. So that was, my first documentary comedy show. It was based on my stand-up comedy shows that I'd been doing in the Melbourne Comedy Festivals. So I basically was ripping off my own material. So I turned all of my stand-up comedy 1 hour sets into kind of 6 half-hour episodes. It was called Choose Your Own Adventure, and the premise was simply this: what if you could do all the things that you always wanted to do as a child, but never got around to it because you grew up?
What did you want to be when you were a kid? When I was 10, I dreamt of being and doing so many things, but I never got around to them because, well, I grew up. So now, almost 20 years later, I've chosen to go on a quest to be what I've always wanted to be, do what I've always wanted to do. My name's Lawrence Leung. Welcome to my adventures. I've always wanted to be a rock star.
Make a band with a hyper sweatshop, boys a virus guy. Tunes are fresh, the beats are high. Choose your own adventure. I was a kid who played recorder.
Hey, 50 Cent, I don't want to fight you again, all right?
This is my demo.
Choose your own adventure.
You need to treat it like either a small animal or something that you want to make love with.
My mission this week is to find a girl I haven't seen in over 20 years and win her heart. When I was a kid, I wanted to be the best at something, a world champion. This is Freestyle at Fed, the biggest breakdancing competition in the world, and I'm gonna win it. I need to know some... Oh, can you teach me to do that? Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Cube. First rule of Fight Cube is you do not talk about Fight Cube. I want to be a man. I'm sick of being a wimp.
You need to harden up. More fearful. Lawrence is number one. Give it to him, Lawrence. You're a little Weasley little man. Yeah, you are not so Weasley, but
What do you call it? Choose your own adventure.
Choose your own adventure.
But it's definitely interesting.
And you better watch it, otherwise I'll pop a cap in your ass.
Red.
So each episode was about a particular vocation or a dream that I had, and it was a full documentary-styled comedy show where I would try to find my childhood sweetheart from grade 3 because I had written her this love letter that I never gave to her. So I would try to find her and give it to her as an adult. After traveling to America and learning all about how to talk to women from awful, awful pickup artists, just the grossest, strange people. But then there's other episodes where I would try to meet MacGyver because I was such a fan of his. And when I was a kid, I didn't know it wasn't a real show. When I was little, I thought it was real. Learning how to do breakdancing, learning how to get a world record, solving the Rubik's Cube. So the culmination of one of the episodes, I jumped out of an aeroplane trying to win a Guinness Book world record, solving a Rubik's Cube in free fall before pulling the parachute. And I'm here today, so I survived. I didn't get the world record. There was a Frenchman who did it faster than me and not tandem. He did it solo with a lot of somersaults and yeah, anyway, very arrogant, very French, very French. Yeah. But that series was absolutely fantastic and it was really well received. And I got a lot of emails. Yeah, AFI nomination and heaps of emails from teachers at schools hating me because kids were starting to get into the Rubik's Cube because of me and my TV show. And they were like,
oh, it's you.
Rubik's Cubes. Yeah.
You started the whole craze.
I started a resurgence of the cubes again in sometime in the last decade. And this year I went to the Rubik's Cube World Championships, which was in Melbourne this year. And I met one of the head honchos of the Rubik's Cube group or whoever they are, toy company. And they had actually played my Rubik's Cube episode at one of the grand finals at lunchtime in Germany or something way back when my series was made. So people around the world had seen it in the cubing community and that just excited me to no end.
And then after that, after you did Unbelievable, and then Maximum Choppage.
Yeah, Maximum Choppage was it Australia's first, how did they bill it? Australia's first martial arts comedy series. Yeah, so
I really liked it because it was like a, I mean, you probably don't necessarily want to hear this and it's not insulting. It was like an old-fashioned sitcom. You know,
yeah,
it was getting back to the roots of character, story, likability, you know, characters that, you know, because we moved away from that in Australian comedy.
Yeah, it was a fun experiment. I mean, there was comedy, you know, narrative, but also martial arts in the same episode. So the amazing stuff we could pull on ABC budget in terms of doing genre, because we don't really do, you know, genre pieces in Australia other than, you know, typical suburban type stuff. But to have a martial arts genre, which is extremely difficult to shoot, but also comedy, was absolutely amazing. And I was very lucky. I didn't have to learn too many stunts and martial arts because my character was a wimp.
This is surprising.
I played the lead. I played the lead called Simon, and the central premise was people think that he's gone away and trained to be a huge martial arts expert, and he has to come back to save the town of Cabramatta from these street gangs. But really, he's gone away and pursued his own love of art. And the whole confusion came because when he moved to Melbourne to study, the academy he studied at was Martial's Arts School. And so when he got back, everyone thought he was a martial artist, and it was up to him and his friends to try to save the entire town from a gang of thugs. And yeah, it was a really fun series. And I don't think I started a craze of martial arts bashings at high schools, but it was really fun to make. Yeah.
And it was culturally very diverse.
Yeah, we had perhaps the largest, at its time, there was like 90% Asian cast. And it was at a time where you'd never see anything like that on Australian TV. Yeah, and all the actors who were auditioning were like, I can't believe we're not in a room auditioning against each other for that one role to play waiter number 2 in the Chinese restaurant.
Exactly.
Each of our actors got to play various different roles, from villains to hilarious characters to so many different roles. And also, it's not just one Asian culture. We had Cambodians, we had Vietnamese, we had Cantonese speakers. So it was showing the cornucopia of diversity within Australia. And that was, for us, really important for television to show some of that stuff.
Now, a lot of your shows, as you said, with Choose Your Own Adventure, have come from your comedy festival shows. Your first one was Sucker, and then
Yes.
there was Lawrence Leung Learns to Breakdance, I think was the next one. And then Skeptic,
Yeah.
Puzzle Boy, Jetpack, all sorts of different shows. And then you launched into magic shows, which you'd resisted for a long time, with very few things and unthinkable.
Yeah, listen, I've always had magic in my DNA since, I was a very young kid. And as a teenager, seeing you perform, watching, Paul Daniels on television, or Copperfield specials, or David Blaine, or whatever. And even Raymond Crowe when he was on children's TV shows. Like, I grew up loving magic and studying magic ever since childhood. And so I've never lost it. And I remember making a promise to myself, because I go through phases of going through different hobbies throughout my entire childhood, lock picking one day, and then the next day I'll be doing like ham radio, and the next day I'll be designing mazes and board games. But somehow with magic, I made a promise to myself that I would never ever give it up, because it ticked all the boxes of puzzle making, of creativity, of communication,
psychology,
even psychology, and even trying to build your own self-esteem that all young kids go through. I promised myself I'd never give magic up, because I loved it so much. And throughout my, early adult life doing stand-up comedy shows, I mean, everything was always getting back to my obsession, which is looking at the world through other people's eyes, or seeing that the world can be manipulated, or seeing is not always believing. So yeah, all of my shows are about that. I've done stand-up comedy shows being like a part-time detective trying to solve mysteries. And there were like little bits of, deduction in it. And then I would sort of throw in a witch hand routine to pretend to be a bit of a Sherlock Holmes with the audience. You talked about Sucker, which was my very first solo show. That was like almost a theatre piece about con artists. And it was essentially a card sharking con artist show. There was a lot of poker routines and ace assemblies and all sorts of card mechanics throughout that show, but weaved into a narrative. And I was very lucky with that, because every time I performed it in Australia in a festival, or overseas in Edinburgh or Dublin, I kept getting people asking me, would I make it into a TV series or a documentary or a feature film? People trying to buy the rights from me. And at the time I was very young and I was very nervous, and it's the only thing I'd ever made. So I always kind of said no, but they put the bug in my head that it could be made into a feature film. So a friend of mine from uni who was his career as a director was slowly rising in the ranks, making all sorts of films, TV shows in Australia. And at the same time, my comedy career is going up too. And so we met and I said, can we make this into a feature film? And he was like, he saw it in its earliest incarnation, and perhaps when I was testing it out in a library somewhere at university. And so, yeah, we wrote the screenplay, and it took a very long time to get it up in development. And finally, I think it was 2015, we shot it. And one of the characters, the con artist character who plays the mentor for the young 17-year-old Lawrence Leung, was played by Timothy Spall, great veteran British actor who was also in the Harry Potter movies. And it was just amazing to have him on board, playing this sort of veteran, old carny type character. And for the magicians out there, we had a lot of, card sharking in it. So Timothy Spall's card mechanics were done by Barry Govan, and the lead actor Jean-Luc. Jean-Luc, he plays a young Lawrence Leung. His hands were my hands. But also there's a scene where the camera doesn't cut away, and it just closes in on him just practicing some shuffling and pulling out some aces. And that was a routine that I had taught him, and he'd worked really diligently on, so he looked pretty great on screen as well.
Sucker is a story about an aging con man.
My good man, I am here to play.
His daughter and a young runaway called Lawrence. And they travel down the eastern seaboard swindling people with old grifts and cons. Sucker started off as a solo one-man theatre show that I wrote and performed. And 10 years later, it has become a movie. And I'm so thrilled and excited to rope some audiences into our world. We sat down and listened to the tape of the whole show, and then we basically transcribed the world of a 60-minute show into a 90-minute movie. And it was quite a challenge. How do we visualize something which has only been in my head in the real world? And over the years, we've been developing it in different ways and tightening the story, and maybe adding a bit more that you don't actually hear in the show, some of the backstories of some of the characters. And now it's become its own world in itself. And what I love about it is that it's still got the pure core story of the original show that made everyone sort of lean forward at different points and go, oh, still has those aha moments, but takes it to another level altogether.
It was a really good film. I came along to one of the premieres that you had in Hoyts. And is it still available online?
Yeah, I think it's, we'll leave a link down below, but I think it's suckerthemovie.net. But yeah, look down below. I'm sure Tim will put the link down there.
It'll be there. And the other show, I mean, because that was your first show, it had magic in it. Then you had lots and lots of comedy shows, which were fantastic. And then you did Very Strange Things.
So Very Strange Things, I guess, was an offshoot or a live spin-off of my unbelievable TV show. I had gotten so much satisfaction out of designing some of the mentalist style behind the scenes effects in that TV show that I thought, this has to be done on stage. I have to still teach some of the same psychology that I teach in the TV show, but can I do this for a live audience? And so I wrote this show, and I basically pilfered ideas from my own TV show, but it had a lot of effects and a lot of methods, or at least ways to obscure methods that I believe, were my own. So I tried to make sure that it was also a magician fooler because it was in the Magic Festival. But also I wanted to take the audience on a journey of where half the audience, if they were believers and half were skeptics, hopefully by the end of the show, they would switch places.
Yes.
And the whole thing was pretty much based on the final episode of Unbelievable, which was called The Experiment, where we tried to turn a skeptic into a believer by essentially doing a whole bunch of, I guess you could call them spectator as magician effects on him, so that he thought he had psychic powers. And we filmed it with him over the course of the week. It was this elaborate stunt where his sister, who works at a university, had tricked him into coming along to a psychological parapsychology test, and the psychic at the test was giving him a fortune-telling reading and predicting what was going to happen to him over the course of the week. And then over the course of that week, with hidden cameras, we would film these bizarre, weird things happening to him. And then he would come back and report about it. And then the experimenters would say, oh, you perhaps have some sort of latent psi powers. And then we would do some like ESP card sort of testing on him. But lo and behold, he didn't know that the examiner was FISM award-winning Simon Coronel. Before he was FISM award-winning, this was back in the day, Simon Coronel, wonderful magician, great sleight of hand artist. And he was manipulating the ESP cards, of course. And so this guy, at the time, he just could not, because he was a mathematician, and a lot of the things that we got to make him believe that he was a psychic, he wasn't really buying, because he could see, he could sort of run the probability in his head. But then when we pushed it to the nth degree of almost impossible in terms of probability with these ESP cards, off camera, he just ran out to his sister and just said, I think I have ESP, and he was just loving it. And so then we brought him back inside the room, and he had to try to see if he could move the coin with the power of his mind. And of course, I was inside the table because we'd built this specially built table, and I had this magnet, and we were moving the coin around, and he just lost his shit. He was just swearing and just, this can't be real. And of course, at that moment, I burst out of the table, and everyone that he'd encountered in the last week, including his sister and all the camera crew, would run in classic candid camera style and just say, no, it was all a hoax. Sorry, you don't have superpowers. It's a TV show. Can you sign this release form?
And you're worried about me signing a release form.
Yeah. So that experience kind of really inspired me to make a full-length mentalism show.
Yeah.
Which was called Very Strange Things.
And you followed up with The Unthinkable after that. And then you did have a show, not a mentalism show, a comedy show you started called Growing Concerns. And I assume that's now been put on hold because of coronavirus, like everything else.
Yeah, everything's put on hold, including a new work that I'm doing, which was going to be in this year's Melbourne Magic Festival. It was a collaboration.
Still secret?
Yeah. Yes.
We haven't talked to anyone about it. I've not spilled any because I think this is too good a tip.
Okay, so you know what? Yeah, I won't say anything else other than it's something we'll have to hold over to another festival, but it's something that's really exciting, and it's not a typical magic show at all. It's something that actually, if we keep it a secret, people will be really interested in it. Something, I'll just use the word immersive. People seem to like that word these days for entertainment.
It's overused.
Overused. Yeah, but it's a secret project.
So were there any other secret projects you had in the works that have had to come to a grind to a halt, or are you somehow managing to continue? I know that having kids there in the house has made it very challenging for you as far as finding time to do anything.
Yeah, so many secret things that can't be done. So many secret things. I think, this pandemic has really made, us as writer performers, artists sort of take stock and look at ourselves. I feel it's very an existential time. It's different from a lot of other industries which aren't affected. I mean, I had a look in the stats in Australia, and apparently like up between 80 and 90% of most industries are still running. But when it comes to the arts, we're down to 47% of businesses still opening or operating. So we were, because of social distancing measures, we were
like I need to say, who books that? Who books that?
Yeah. Yeah, we were the first people to take a hit, and we might be the last people to come back online. So we've had to, really try to be clever about how we do things, which is why I think it's great that you're doing, this web series. If not getting inspiration from other people, at least we're connecting with each other.
Yeah, yeah. So are you going to be maybe writing a book?
Yes, I am actually. Yes, I have.
I didn't know that.
A book in the works. I have a few projects, but
So I've got to wrap it up, but I'm going to ask 3 final questions.
Yes.
1, are we going to see any more Elvis Kwan?
Elvis Kwan? No, probably not. No. Elvis Kwan, of course, was the doctor from the TV show Offspring. I played an awkward doctor, I would say he was. I've played a lot of doctors on television. Yeah, so my character of Elvis appeared at a very interesting episode in Offspring's entire, collection of series, because it was the episode that Dr. Patrick, I think his name was, died. And he was that Dr. McDreamy that all hospital-based TV shows have. And
you were his replacement.
And it really, well, I wasn't his replacement, but I turned up in that episode as a new regular character. And so when he died, I started getting hate mail from a lot of Offspring fans thinking that I was replacing Dr. McDreamy Loveboat. People in supermarkets were stopping me and saying, how dare the writers and how dare they get you? But the series is well and truly done and finished. I think it ended on a high that everyone wanted. It was a very popular show, but it had to end.
You could have replaced him because you were GQ Man of the Year 2009.
2009. Wow, 11 years ago. Yeah, that sounds so strange to me. GQ Man of the Year. That must have been that was during my hot guy phase, clearly.
It was. When they had those little Lego men of you that they were selling.
Before I became a magician.
Yeah,
what are the other 2 questions?
The other question was, is it true you have a Star Wars character named after you, and how did that come about? Yes,
good research. I have a where do I have the picture of it? Where's the comic book? It's on the shelf there. But yes, I'm in the Star Wars universe as from the Star Wars Invasion comic book series. The writer is he's now a massive comic book writer called Tom Taylor. He works across all of the different, DC, Marvel, everything. But yeah, back many years ago, he wrote for the Star Wars Invasion series. And when I found out that he was writing for Star Wars, as a massive Star Wars fan, I begged him, please put my name hidden somewhere as an Easter egg in the Star Wars universe, maybe a derivative of my name as a swamp planet or something. And he did better than that. He made me a Jedi Knight called Lawrence Leung. And, that's a bucket list tick. That's all my dreams come true. And then I was at a New Year's Eve party, and I remember this guy came up to me, and he looked at me and he went, La Leung. And I looked at him and I went, Zarlok? Because my character in the comic book gets completely slain by this Sith Lord, grotesque monster called Zarlok. And I looked at this guy and I said, Zarlok, and his name was Simon Locke. And I was La Leung, Lawrence Leung. And so I met my nemesis at a party that Tom Taylor was at.
Wow. I don't think I'm not even going to bother asking the third question now after that, because that was so good.
Oh, really? What's the third question? You have to ask. That's a secret, is it?
I'll ask it psychically.
And the answer is no.
See, it wasn't worth
I
it.
will not. I will not do that.
It has been fantastic chatting with you. There's so many other things we could talk about. We didn't get into half the stuff I wanted to chat about. I would love to talk to you a bit more about your process too, because you are very innovative in your mentalism. And a lot of people don't understand that you do create almost all of your tricks. And they can come along when we get started again, back to Slight Night, and catch you testing out some of your material, because it's always so well thought out, and it's always so refreshing. And it's just been so good chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe there'll be a part 2 of these interviews. Who knows? I'd love to talk about that stuff, but it would take another 40-minute chat to go into all of those things. I mean, I love mentalism so much, and thank you for having me today to talk about other things other than magic.
It was very interesting. It's very good to catch up, and hopefully this, as you say, the coronavirus gives people that existential experience to look at themselves and reinvent themselves and come back out fresh and new and revitalized on the other side.
And hopefully full of immunity. Got to end on a high, Tim.
See you later. Bye-bye.
See ya. Cheers.